Look, I can accept that we live in a time where horror games are, well, hit or miss, and it's not my intention to throw hate or shade at developers. That's not the purpose of my videos, and I hate that I have to take time at the beginning of this video to say that. In any case, hi, I'm MangaKamen. I'm the guy who last year made a video complaining about modern horror games, and today I'm complaining about Mascot Horror in a shorter video. Now, a lot of people will probably point out that a lot of my complaints in my video last year were more focused on Mascot Horror-based franchises, and hey, fair enough. I can totally see that criticism, and I can agree to some extent. Hell, as you're watching this, I'm working on a more expansive video talking about how horror games get less scary as you play them, so look for that in the coming weeks or maybe next month. But today we're talking about Mascot Horror. Now, you may be wondering what exactly is Mascot Horror. Mascot horror is the idea of taking mascots from children's media and subverting their initial purposes and turning them into horror monsters. A lot of people will often credit Five Nights at Freddy's for the popularization of this concept, but I'd argue that it's been done before then. Hell, just look at Sonic.exe for that, where it takes the blue blur and turns them into a demon. Or you can even probably say Ben Drowns. Now those are more creepypastas, but they still go from the same idea. The concept in and of itself is fascinating, and going back to Five Nights at Freddy's, it takes the concept of a pizzeria and its animatronics, like what you'd see with Chuck E. Cheese's, and it takes the concept of something innocent and effectively corrupting it. And considering the last few years, it's definitely become one of the more lucrative types of horror game genres out there. Granted, as you can tell from the title and my opening, I don't exactly have the highest opinion on Mascot Horror. This isn't me saying that the genre is bad, mind you, but it has quite a big issue with it. And that's its target demographics, namely YouTubers and young kids. Now, this isn't a new take, not even for me. I cited this stuff in my major video last year, which hey, if you want to watch that, go ahead and check it out. But not right now. I want to explain a little bit more, because there's nothing wrong with having a targeted demographic. While I believe that anyone can get into anything, not everything is made for everyone. This is basic, common business tactics to understand what your product is going to be used for and who would most likely benefit from it. It allows you to focus your time and energy on things such as design work, mechanics, and even story. I'm only saying this in the lens of making a game, however, and this is a very, very small version of what I was talking about. A lot of the Mascot Horror focuses on kids because a lot of the elements that are used are banking on the cutesy aspect with a mix of horror. Looking at Five Nights at Freddy's as an example, you can see that while the original animatronics look creepy, they still have that appeal to kids. Look, there's enough art on the internet of these characters to make this be the case, and a lot of it's in the category that YouTube would kick me off the platform if I showed you, so just take my word on it. As for YouTubers, because a lot of YouTubers have a younger audience, such as Markiplier and Game Theory, they help capitalize on the kids market by either playing these games or making videos talking about these kinds of games, which in turn gets more eyes onto the games. It's a symbiotic relationship. Now, whether or not this relationship is a good thing is going to be based on your point of view. Let's face it, a person like Markiplier has the ability to make a game extremely popular just by playing and reacting to it.
The first night. If I didn't want to stay the first night, why would I stay any more than 5?
Again, whether or not it's a good thing is going to be up to perspective. For game devs, you can get the holy grail of your game being played or having multiple videos dissecting the lore, then there's a good chance your game can go viral. And in turn, that allows you to make more money and get more into your craft, if you choose. But because of that, you get a lot of things I personally think are detrimental to the world of gaming and horror to an extent. This is where I talk about Garten of Banban. Garten of Banban is a small indie horror game made by the Euphoric brothers that came out in January of this year. The basic idea of the game is that you're investigating a kindergarten that has a lot of mascots that are... Look, I don't want to come out as if I'm shitting on a game and its developers for the sake of shitting on it. That's the last thing I want to do, but these designs just suck. When people think your product is a satire of the genre and it isn't, I think that's a problem. And in the main menu of this free-to-play game is already a link to some merch. Like, that certainly isn't a good sign, and again, I've raged against the concept of having a game that is mainly to push merch. I didn't like it in Poppy's Playtime, and I sure as hell don't like it here. And here I thought Dream's merch was cheap as all hell. $10 for a sticker? What? There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, but it really feels like a cash grab if you're going to already have a merch shop that has some quickly scribbled designs on merch that seems a bit too overpriced. I've railed on the concept of what Poppy Playtime pulled with all its money squeezing and the NFTs, and in all honesty, considering how this kind of trend is becoming more and more popular, along with how YouTubers are basically showcasing this kind of trash, I really don't like how the horror genre is going, especially when there's this more prominent push of Mascot Horror. Hey, I'm recording on a different day, so if I sound different from the rest of the video, well, there you go. Since Chapter 2 of Garten of Banban released, and since I want to extend the time code on this video so I can get that delicious ad revenue, I am a YouTuber after all, we're all greedy SOBs. I figured I'd actually discuss my issues with the first game other than its aesthetics, and talk a little bit of the second game, or Chapter 2. Cause it'd be hypocritical of me, a guy who's gone on record so many times saying that gameplay is key to a good game and not graphics, that I am judging this game based on how it looks. That's not right. I admit that's shallow of me, and I want to rectify that. Here's hoping that this doesn't kick my ass. Alright, so for standard fare, this is a first-person game, and it's a bit of a standard for a lot of horror games nowadays, and I'm not knocking it for that. However, for the first chapter, there's a bit of a slowness going on. Like, you have to wait for the drone to fly over, the egg-collecting activity for Pila Bird is monotonous, and of course, when you get to the other side of the bottomless ball pit...
He's just standing there, menacingly!
And that's really all you can say for Chapter 1. It's a 10-minute fray, and while I don't like it, hating on something that's so short and free isn't really my style, even if I dislike the merch store and its artistic style. But Chapter 2? Well, that's a paid product. If there's one thing I can say, well, it's actually a bit of an improvement from the first chapter. They've got voice acting.
3 birds with 1 stone. I get all of your key cards, I get the perfect specimen, and I don't have to deal with that thing down there. And it's all thanks to you.
I mean, it's not all that great, but hey, even bad voice acting can use to help improve a product, so kudos on that. The drone is back. Still not a fan of using it to push buttons, though. Maybe you could use the button and have it be timed with the drone's pushing, like you push a button and then the drone pushes a button. I wouldn't have an issue with it. Then we get to the other gameplay sections that are new to this. Let's talk about the gameplay section with the classroom. I really didn't care for it. It felt like a waste of time with how twice you had to just get some redundant items to switch tables. Just felt like 5 minutes of filler. And immediately after that, you have to catch Opila Bird's little chicks and put them in a nest, going back and forth a good number of times. These things aren't hard to do, they're just really redundant and waste time, which for a horror game is a really bad idea. Even if they only last like 5 minutes, redundancy is something that can really stagnate a tense situation, especially in a horror game. And one final note, the chase music that plays during the running section didn't really scare me, it just sounded like a bunch of frogs croaking in my ears. Here's the thing. While I will stand with my issue with Garten of Banban, its design choices, gameplay, and etc., I will fully admit that Banban essentially is a breaking point for horror games, especially not for me, but for a lot of people. There have been far too many games that were inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, aka the Mascot Horror theme. And because of that influx of titles, some good, some bad, and some that are bleh, it has really burned a ton of people out there on the subject, and I feel like a number of that is steadily growing more and more every day. And Garten of Banban unfortunately was that breaking point, at least to me. Because while I still don't like the game, and I don't really care for it, it does feel like a bit of a punching bag at this point. Hell, if the internet didn't pick it up, it probably will just fade into obscurity, and hey, if the developers can actually improve on what they're doing, that's great, more power to them. Alright, let's get back to the actual video now. Now, if you want to talk about a different side of this coin, keeping on the trend of issues that I have, Bendy and the Dark Revival. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is as bad as Garten of Banban or Poppy's Playtime. I'd hesitate to call it scary to me. Mostly because it's become, well, BioShock, which from a gameplay standard isn't bad, but for a horror game it can be detrimental. Now before you get to the comment section, I'm not claiming that this is a bad game, and it certainly isn't on the level of Garten of Banban. It's just one of those more recently released horror games that falls in the camp of Mascot Horror, and one that I kind of want to talk about. I could probably make a much longer video talking about some of my criticisms with the game itself, but its gameplay is honestly what made the experience kind of a toll on me, since a lot of the time it was repetitive. This is mostly due to the combat, which to me really affected the horror factor of the game. I really didn't care for the inclusion of fetch quests, not to mention it really felt like the scare factor for this game wasn't as good as it was in the original. I mean, I will say that it looks better than the original, at least from a design point, and hey, I can appreciate that. Granted, I can chalk that last one about not being afraid of it to me just being used to scary games nowadays, but who knows? Now, I'd be lying if I didn't say there weren't any good horror games coming out nowadays. Hell, the Dead Space remake is actively scary to me, and while some people would probably consider that a cheap choice since it's a remake and not an original property, throwing the fact that unless you count the necromorphs, you really can't call this Mascot Horror. Well, it's my video, not yours. I can use an example if I want to. Like, it's not perfect, and I do want to bring up some of my issues with these games in a more long-form video talking about how horror games become less scary, but I'm getting off point. Mascot Horror is an oddity that, while I can see the potential of, I feel like it's being exploited a bit too much, and it's honestly affecting my interest in the genre. I'm not going to say that the genre is killing my love for a good scare in video games, but it certainly does leave a bad taste in my mouth. However, what do you guys think? Am I off base here, or do you think I'm onto something? If not, leave your own thoughts down below about Mascot Horror. I'm MangaKamen, and have a nice showtime.